All right. So can you just introduce yourself and we'll start with this question. When was the first time that you read Harry Potter? Because I know that you read it a little bit later in life, right?
That's right. Yeah. My name is Bria and I'm from North Carolina. And I read Harry Potter for the first time in 2020 during COVID.
Why did you wait so long?
Well, I grew up in one of those houses where Harry Potter was not allowed.
Ooh, okay.
um, I think, though, I've just realized this recently. Like, I think if I had really wanted to,
Yeah,
though, I would have because I was a pretty stubborn kid. Um, but it also just like the surface level descriptions didn't really fit my what I was drawn to. Like I really loved reading.
yeah.
I've always been a big reader, but I was really drawn to historical fiction
Hmm.
and a lot of like female protagonists, female heroines. So, on the surface, like no, I mean, Harry Potter is not those things.
Yeah, definitely. There's good
So
female
I think,
characters in there. There's like they mix some cool little bits of
yes,
history, but it's definitely not either of those things.
yes, yeah. Um, yeah, so I think it also just I wasn't like, "Oh, I'm not allowed to read it, but I'm gonna go," I was like, "Okay, yeah, that's fine." Um, and I'm, like, trying to think back to why I even picked it up. I think it was just because of COVID.
Yeah. Honestly, COVID, it's a little bit bored, and like you just need something to do. Harry Potter's a good series.
Yeah, I think I was looking for an escape.
Yeah.
And I think I'm lucky because in a way, because I almost feel like I did kind of get a second chance at reading it for the first time. I know
Yeah.
you talk about that a lot, like wishing that you could read it for the first time again.
Hmm.
But I think, COVID was just such a whirlwind, and I'd also had some trauma around that time and
Hmm.
just like some really intense things that were going on in my life alongside COVID.
Hmm.
And so and I also just like inhaled the books.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Like,
then
yeah.
yeah, so like 3 years later, it was almost like I got to read them again because I mean, it's a little bit scary how much I forgot. Like, it's a little bit it's like, whew, I mean, I think it's just it just was like a clear example to me of like what impact the trauma had on my
Yeah, for
brain.
sure, for sure.
Unfortunately, like that's the dark cloud. The silver lining is it was almost like getting to read it for the first time again.
Yeah. That's kind of what Lizzie
Yeah.
experienced. Like she read it and she read it in a whirlwind a few years ago, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden she read it again and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't remember anything. This is so entertaining and enjoyable." Honestly, that's like a pretty it's pretty nice if you could read a series and like get the same amount of joy from it twice.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, or the second time it was even more it was like I just processed it a little bit more,
yeah.
and that's when I really, really fell in love with it. I think also I was kind of depressed actually the first time after I finished reading it, like, it was
Hmm.
really, like, hard. You know how it's hard
Yeah.
to finish it, like, it's
Yeah.
what they call it, postpartum depression. Um,
Yep.
so I think I had that the first time I read it too, so I was just kinda like, "Okay, alright, I'm done." Like, just, like, disassociate, like, put that to the side,
Hmm.
do something else to distract myself. Um, and the second time I read it, actually, well, that's when I finished. I also I felt devastated.
Yep.
um,
Yep.
and then and that's when I found the pod is I was like on Reddit, like, hey, like I'm dying here. Like, what do I do? And people suggested your pod. They also suggested Potterless, and I tried that,
Hmm.
but I couldn't get into it because they were, because I hear like
Yeah.
he gets more into it and more like respectful. I don't know if that's the
Yeah.
right word,
Nope.
but
I'm
you know what I
completely
mean.
with you.
Like,
I know exactly what you mean. everyone
I
who
heard like
listens to our podcast and comes from Potterless says that we just respect the text a little bit more. We're the podcast
yeah.
for readers. Whereas like if you just want like a fun podcast, I think Potterless might be better. But we're like the ones that we're like very serious about Harry Potter.
Yes. Like Harry Potter is like it holds a place of honor in our
Yeah,
hearts.
absolutely. I'm like even any book that I read. I mean, like, yeah, it's fun to be like skeptical to some extent of the books that you read and be cynical over like some cheesy things that are in there. But I'm like, if I'm gonna read a book like Harry Potter, I loved. I haven't listened to the whole podcast, but Harry Potter and the Sacred Text had a great line where they were like, "We're gonna treat this book like a sacred text, and assume that
Mm,
that the author didn't make a single mistake in it. So like, we're gonna try to find stuff out about like how the series
mm,
works and how it like all the inner workings of it." And I still remember there was a moment when I was like just starting to do the podcast where I forgot exactly what I was looking up. But I remember looking something up for Reddit and like I couldn't find an answer, so I threw it out in the Harry Potter Reddit. Like this was like right when I started the podcast. Um, I forgot what exactly saw, but I posted it and I was like, "Hey, has anybody else seen this? Is there any explanation for this?" And then there was a few comments, and then one person commented being like, "Or you guys take this way too seriously, and that this is just like a children's story, and she probably made a mistake." And I remember someone commented under that being like, "Honey, you are in the wrong Discord if you think that." And I was like, "Yes, my people that are like, no, like let's take this seriously." Even though it's like a fun kids book, we all know that, but I'm like, let's escape and have a good time and read this book like it is like the holy Bible, and like assume there's no mistakes in this thing, and like really treat it with respect. That's like our MO for this kind of podcast.
yeah, I there were a couple of things that I was like, "Oh, JK made a mistake,"
Mm-hmm.
like rolling my eyes but over time I'm like, "No, actually," like I've kind of realized, I mean, it's really amazing. Like there's moments that you think are just like random moments.
Mm-hmm.
And then but the more you read and connect the dots, on your second, third read, it's like, "Oh no. No, no,
Yeah.
that comes up later."
Yeah.
And I used to laugh at well, the first time I heard it, I really rolled my eyes. I heard it I think in Newt. Um, People were talking about, someone brought up how the plants that Snape talks about in his very first potions
Yeah.
lesson,
Yeah. 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 Yes.
like you can
Oh
kind of
my
like
gosh.
translate it. And
Yes.
at first I was like, "Oh, whatever, that's ridiculous." But over time, I've been like, you know what? I actually think JK did that on purpose.
Yeah.
I don't think it was Snape saying it. Like, I don't, because
Yeah.
that's the way
Absolutely.
it was first described to me, is like
Yeah.
he was saying, "I bitterly regret Lily's death,"
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that. But like, I don't think he was trying to send any messages because he's
Yeah.
not that self-aware.
Yeah.
But JK,
Ooh. Yes.
I think she did it on purpose. I
Yeah.
think absolutely, like, yes, this plant, you know, is a type of lily, and I'm really excited as I'm going through I guess this is my fourth full read that
Yes.
I'm
It's
doing
incredible.
along with Newt. And I'm so excited because I'm really keeping an eye out for plants and symbolism.
That makes me so happy because I love plants so much. So you gotta
Me
find
too.
anything that you can find. You have to send it to me. I would be so
Okay.
fascinated.
Well, I actually already have one. So this is actually when
Yes,
it started for
this
me
makes me
is
so happy.
I was listening to my third, I say read, but
Mm-hmm.
some of my reads have been listens or like
Yeah,
hybrid
nothing wrong
read
with
and
that.
listen. So my third read through, quote unquote, was listening to John Voth
Ooh,
read them, and so good. I love it so
he is
much.
the best. He is the
Um,
absolute best.
I love seeing his just raw reactions. I
Yeah.
love
Oh my
his voices
gosh.
are amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, he was reading um 6,
Mm-hmm.
and he was, reading the part where Dumbledore comes to the Dursleys' house to talk to the Dursleys and pick up Harry
Mm-hmm.
before like they go to find Slughorn.
Yeah.
And Dumbledore says, it's been a while since I've been here. Paraphrasing, your agapanthuses
Yeah. 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 I was gonna
are
say.
flourishing or agapanth. I can't remember, but he's talking about this plant. So I was like, let me look that up. And so I looked up agapanthus, and it is also called, like the colloquial name for it is um, lily of the Nile. That's what it is.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I
also
remember
called
looking this
lily of
up.
the Nile.
Yep.
You looked this up too? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Okay, but here's the other thing
Because it
though.
was such an I've heard of agapanthus before, but I was like, wait, there has to be something here. Like, what is going on? And I remember looking that up and seeing it was Lily of the Nile, and I was like, there's no way. It was what
Did
else?
you? But did Go ahead.
No, you go, because I don't know.
Sorry,
I don't
I'm
know if
getting
I found the
excited.
other thing that you found. Go ahead.
Okay, this is the other thing is that agapanthus, like the first part of that word, is from agape, one of the Greek words for love.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh, he's saying Lily's love
Yeah.
protection is flourishing here. Like, woo, chills. Like,
That is
yeah,
unbelievable. That is the find of a lifetime. That is incredible. Seriously, that's like something you got to post on Reddit, and I'm sure people are like, I've never seen that before. And that's one of my favorite things too about this whole community is like, I mean, it's been years, 20 something years since this has come out, and people are still finding new stuff like that, and like
yeah.
it's so incredible. Like, okay, so in the first one, I'm kind of with you. Like, I don't think Snape had intended that, but I'm like, okay, even if he did, J.K. like Jo, she was definitely the one that intended that. For this next one, I'm like, Dumbledore 100% went into that, knowing like he's gonna maybe like there's some kind of like spell that he put on some of these flowers going to like actually be able to gauge how well the protection was going. So when he walks in and he sees the Agapanthus are doing well, he's like, perfect, exactly what I want. And I
Yeah, or
love that
maybe
he
he's
says that.
like, Petunia knows
Mm-hmm.
about the protection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he's like amused that, like, subconsciously, Petunia is,
Yeah.
planting
Yeah.
this plant that is like symbolic of Lily's love.
Oh my gosh, it adds such an interesting backstory to Petunia too. Like, again, she's one of those characters that you hate, and I still kind of hate her. I think she's like, terrible, but she has at least an interesting background compared to Vernon, who like is just a brute. I'm like, Petunia, you have a little bit of sympathy for, and if she's actually like that one line, I'm glad that we didn't get that one line, but I would love to know what she would have wanted to say to Harry at the very end of the book, um,
Mm,
or at the beginning of the seventh book, where she was like, she looked like she wanted to say something, then she just walked away. I would love to know what she was
mm.
going to say, but I'm glad that she wrote it like that, so it like lets us kind of try to fill that in, because I have this lingering thing. I feel like she just continually regretted that, and she's like one of those people who, rather than like fess up and like change her actions, she just kind of gets stuck in her ways, and like
Mm.
it's like an almost an abusive cycle where like she feels so scorned and she feels so like not neglected but like frustrated by this whole thing that she really wasn't able to help or do anything, and so she's taking it out on, it's like very akin to Snape, I think. So she's taking it out on like Harry, who she shouldn't, but she can't really
Mm.
break the cycle. But deep, deep, deep down in there, I think she truly, truly loved her sister and like wears that regret on her every day of her life. And I'm like,
Yeah.
if she's sitting there tending these agapanthus, you know that she's doing this, and she's probably thinking about her sister while she's doing it, just regretting everything that she could have done.
I really want to read the letters between her and
Oh
Dumbledore. I
my
really want to
gosh,
read
I
the
know.
first letter. I just think that's amazing
Yeah,
that she wrote a letter to Dumbledore asking to come to
I
Hogwarts.
know. I would love to know the contents of all that kind of stuff. It's
Yeah,
like,
I tried to like look it up before. I was like, has
yeah.
someone written this, and I think I did find someone had written his letter to her that was, I think, maybe the Howler,
Hmm.
but not the ones when she was a kid.
Yeah. It's devastating. Like I would love it. I'm glad that we don't have it because that makes us fill in all like the fun stuff and like come up with these fun theories. But oh my gosh, if she just starts like pumping out more of like the extra stuff like that, I would be
Yeah.
so into it. Oh, I would be so into that.
Yeah, I really want more Ilvermorny stuff.
Yes, I need a whole series about Ilvermorny so badly. Like I want to go to like the Salem witch trials era and study Ilvermorny and like what happened with Ilvermorny because they were supposed like
Mm.
we can this can be our transition to talking about Ilvermorny because they were supposed to be a school and they still are a school, which I'm very proud of because you know that's us. They're a school that's founded on um like non-prejudice, where it was founded by a
Yeah.
no-maj and a witch, and I'm like I think that's fantastic. But I'm like, what happened with the Salem witch trials during that time? Like, how did that transform or change
Mm.
the school? I'm like, that kind of history is so fascinating to me. I need a whole series
Yeah.
from that era on.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought about that aspect of it.
Yeah, the whole
Yeah,
school
I
is.
would eat that up. Like if they make a series
Yeah.
on Ilvermorny and the Marauders, I'll
Oh
be
my
happy.
gosh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Same. What's your you mentioned it before. Your Hogwarts house is what?
Gryffindor, there's a bit of a story there though.
Oh, okay.
Well, I
Let's
don't
hear the
know.
story.
Well, okay, so I got Gryffindor in 2020 when I first took the quiz.
Okay.
Um, but I kind of wanted Gryffindor, and
Yeah,
so
you answer the
I,
questions according.
it may, yeah,
The
I
que-
was
the
kind of doubting it.
Yeah, yeah. The questions are like, what's your favorite animal? A lion, a badger?
Yeah. Yeah. However, I took that quiz that, breaks it down, like that has percentages of the different
Yeah, yeah,
houses.
yeah.
And um that so I was like, okay, so we'll see. Like I'll use this. Like I just did this a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's like, we'll use that to see if I'm really a Gryffindor. I was suspicious that I was a Hufflepuff.
Ooh, yes. Come on, join us.
So I thought, okay, I was like, I bet when I take this quiz, it's gonna be like 49% Hufflepuff and 51% Gryffindor, or vice versa. Like, or
Okay.
it's gonna be switched.
Okay.
But it very much was not.
Oh, okay.
Um, it was 30% Gryffindor. I have it written down.
Okay.
29% Ravenclaw,
Wow.
21% Hufflepuff, and 20% Slytherin. And I'm
Wow,
like, what is happening?
you are a very well balanced human. You're all the houses
Apparently,
combined into one.
the Slytherin one is hard for me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I have Slytherin issues. Like now, I mean,
yeah.
I love Snape and
Yeah.
I love Slughorn.
Hmm.
But outside of those two characters, like I just
Yeah.
really I like someone says they're Slytherin, like in real life, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
like,
I know. I got immediately put up walls. I immediately have trust issues with them. I'm like, I don't
right?
know.
It's so bad. It's so bad. I'm working on it, and this is like the next step in my journey is being told that I'm 20% Slytherin.
Yes, it's slowly breaking you down into accepting Slytherins
Yeah,
because I love the idea of a
yeah,
Slytherin. They're just like ambitious people. They're like trying to claw ahead. I'm like there's admirable qualities to them, but I do wish in the books, and this is like everyone's wish for Slytherins, that there was more sympathetic Slytherin
yeah,
characters. I think I
yeah.
asked that once of like what would you change in the books if you could, and a few people who were Slytherins said Slytherin characters who aren't like the worst human
M-
beings ever.
yeah. More nuance,
Yeah,
more
yeah.
variety.
And you get that
Yeah.
with Slughorn. Slughorn is like an interesting version of a Slytherin, but you don't really
Yes.
get that with anybody else. Um,
Yeah, and honestly, like even I love that Dumbledore says this, but
mhm.
I'm very, you know, I have Gryffindor pride. When
All
Dumbledore
right.
says to Snape, like maybe we sort too soon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I do love that, but it's kind of a bummer for, Slytherin's like
Mm.
PR because it just kind of undercuts, it's like one of
Yes.
the few characters that is on the right side, that's a
Yeah.
Slytherin,
That's
then
so
Dumbledore
funny.
even kind of questions.
I've never thought about it in that light. I've always loved that quote so much. And then it's like
Yeah.
literally just Dumbledore just throwing shade at Slytherin, being like, oh,
Wah, wah, yeah.
that house sucks. We sorted you too soon. You should have been in Gryffindor.
Yeah.
I think that's good. I think there's a point to that as well where he's just saying at that moment maybe he's showing a lot more bravery than he is ambition. Like his ambition was winning out for a
Yeah.
while. But I especially because a few friends of mine, like Lizzie is a Slytherin and she's definitely like a Slytherin at heart. But she's like seeing some friends of mine, some good friends of mine become Slytherin or like find out that they're Slytherin has softened my heart
Yeah.
towards Slytherin a little bit. But I still,
Yeah.
the walls are always up whenever someone's like, I'm a Slytherin. And if they're proud of it, I'm especially like, I don't know, who are you? What's going on here?
Thank you for making me not feel as much like a terrible person. Because I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna get so much flack if
No.
I'm like really upfront about my Slytherin prejudice.
Well, it is interesting too, because I find so after everyone's first read of the books, or like anyone who's just a movie watcher, no one really wants to be in Slytherin. But if you've read the books, there's like maybe if you read the books one time, you have like a bad perception of Slytherin. The more that you read it, and the more you get into like fan fiction and like the actual nerd community of like people who are in Slytherin, the less it becomes like of this like terrible thing, and the more you kind of can see it for people who are just like very, very ambitious and they will claw ahead and do anything that they can to get ahead. And I still think there's like some negative attributes. They're definitely like the dark house. This is why like, there's a ton of dark wizards from that house. But I'm like a Hufflepuff, so I am so freaking proud of like how good we were especially at the Battle of Hogwarts, how all of us stuck around, and we stuck around for loyalty.
And Slytherin serves as the contrast.
Exactly. So like I feel like our two houses are very contrasting. And like, I'm a Hufflepuff, so I can like look at them and being like, oh, there's some good in there. But deep down, I'm like, I don't trust anybody from Slytherin. They're all scumbags.
Yeah, and I want to say, like you, it helps when that's what like came before me being told by this quiz that I'm 20% Slytherin to soften me. Like first is Snape and Slughorn, and then it was like getting to know people who are Slytherins. Like there are like the Slytherins in the group are fantastic, and in our new group and everything. So just wanted to say that.
Like honestly, it would have been good. And I know like again, people talk about the changes they can make in the series, and I know some people talk about how they think Percy should have been a Slytherin, and he seems like a good example of a Slytherin, to be honest. I'm actually really curious why he got sorted into Gryffindor. I know some people said that maybe they gave him the option, like the sorting hat was like, oh, you actually be good in Slytherin, but your family's from Gryffindor. Where do you want to be? And maybe because he felt so much pressure because everyone in his family had been in Gryffindor that he chose Gryffindor.
Yeah.
But really, he's like very much a Slytherin. And then
very focused on climbing.
Yeah, for sure.
The ladder, very ambitious.
Yeah. And then, I mean, at the end, which I mean, it's one of my favorite moments in the book because he really exhibits a lot of Hufflepuff and like loyalty there, but like coming back and like not being so self-deprecating that you are ashamed of coming back. But like when he comes back in the family, I'm like, that is a Hufflepuff through and through. I'm like, that's my boy right there. So I feel like he could have been in Hufflepuff too. And he's brilliant. Like he's okay. I'm going to go on a Percy rant for a second. Because
go for it.
I think that I used to hate him. He used to be my least favorite character in the whole book. Like I remember at one point during like my 8th or 9th read, I would tell people that I hate him more than I hated Umbridge and Voldemort. Like I couldn't stand him because I'm like, he showed so much disloyalty to his family. He was just like clawing.
Oh, the Hufflepuff.
Couldn't stand it. He's like the anti-Hufflepuff to me. And then all of a sudden, when I'm like in these groups and I'm talking more about it, and people are like, "Oh, he's pretty brilliant. He had more OWLs than Hermione. He probably had some kind of time turner at one point, maybe like taking a ton of classes and trying to." So
he had more OWLs than Hermione.
Yeah, he had one more than Hermione, which is shocking.
Whoa!
Because I'm like, in my head,
crazy.
Hermione was like the greatest student ever at Hogwarts, but Percy had more OWLs than her. So I'm like, that's actually pretty impressive.
Wow.
So I'm like, he definitely could have been a Ravenclaw. He definitely could have been a Gryffindor. definitely could have been a Slytherin. And then I think at the
Oh my gosh.
very end of his like time in the books, the one way that he gets redeemed is by being a Hufflepuff. And I
Yeah.
love that so much.
Oh
It's
wow.
he's such a fascinating character. Even though I still like, have a tough time reading certain parts of like where he is in the books, it's like agony to me. I kind of love him
Yeah.
though.
It's interesting because I remember someone said recently that Hermione could have been in any house, or maybe it
Yeah.
wasn't recent, but it was just something older that I was listening to. And I think that is so true. And
Hmm.
it's like she's like, and then Percy's like similar,
Yeah.
actually, in a way.
Agreed.
Like he could have been. It's not like he could have been in any house. Now that talk it through like that, I'm like, oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think like there's something with Ilvermorny that I love where if all of the or if more than one of the
Mhm.
totems like raises its totem to like select you to be part of its house, then the student actually gets the decision to choose which house they
Right.
want to be in. And it hasn't all four of them did it for the Macusa president, Severina Pickery, I think her name was. Um, and I'm like, I feel like that is very true for
That's right.
some students at Hogwarts. Like, it's very rare that a student will have the Sorting Hat be like, "Hey, you could literally join any house that you want, and it's up to you. It's like your decision." So in
Yeah.
Hogwarts, it's a lot more private of a thing. Like, it's not out there how many people are able to be selected by any of the four houses and like can choose themselves. But I think Hermione and Percy are actually two great examples of people. Probably, I think they had the option to choose whatever house they wanted to be in. Because
Yeah.
Hermione is very ambitious too.
Well, she says she describes like someone. Oh, I think it's when she like changes. She like does that tricky charm on the coins
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
DA, and someone's like, "Why are you not in Ravenclaw?"
yeah, yeah.
And she says the Sorting House seriously considered putting me in Ravenclaw.
Yep.
But I think she says, I could be wrong, I could be misremembering, but I think that she says that in the end it still decided Gryffindor.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah,
interesting
yeah. That actually is really interesting. That's
because
actually
it,
I've never thought about that before because Harry has a choice. Harry like is able to
yes,
be like, hey, I want to, but for Hermione,
yes.
maybe she was more indecisive. So the Sorting Hat's like, all right, I know your mind is all going all over the place. Let me just make a decision for you.
Yeah, or maybe it just was like, it just figured out another layer of her
Yeah,
that made it
seriously, yeah.
say Gryffindor.
I kind of love that. Yeah, that's actually interesting.
Yeah.
That's a great catch for that. I've never noticed that.
I kind of just realized it. I was like, oh, wait, that's interesting. Like she
Yeah,
says in the end, it chose Gryffindor. I'm pretty sure. We need to check that.
yeah, yeah,
Fact
yeah. We'll
check
fact
me.
check. Do you know what? Do you
um,
know what Ilvermorny house you are?
I think, okay, all right, let me make sure I don't say this wrong. I think I would be Pukwudgie.
Yeah,
Is that how you say
yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. They're healers, right? They favor healers.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I also thought I might have been Hufflepuff, and then I thought, well, surely if I'm not Hufflepuff, it's my second, and it
Yeah.
wasn't. So I don't know. Maybe I don't really know. There's no quiz, right? Like I tried
No,
to
no,
find
I
one.
think there is. Actually,
There is? Oh,
there used to be. I don't know if they have it anymore. I remember. I think someone was trying to look it up a few weeks ago and they couldn't find it, but there used to be one. Um.
okay. Hmm.
Oh no, actually, I think there still is.
Okay.
I'll send you the link after, and you can jump on it, and
Okay.
then we'll throw it in the notes for
The
Whorehouse.
first when I read just the story of Ilvermorny, I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I have no idea."
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, Thunderbirds sound cool and Wampuses
Yeah.
sound
Honestly, yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't like I don't like I like the Pugwudgie character, William, a lot,
Yeah.
but um I like if I was gonna choose an animal to represent me, like that is not the
Yeah.
one I would
Puckwudgie
choose
would
or
be
creature.
the least favorite
Yeah,
one.
not very cool.
Yeah. The other ones are so fascinating.
um
The horn serpent. I'm a
yeah.
wampus, so I'm like very proud of being a wampus.
Oh, wait a minute, you are?
Yeah.
I never would have guessed that. Maybe we might be reading different materials here
Yeah.
because
They're
I never would have guessed that.
really wampus warriors. Got a warrior spirit in me somewhere, I guess,
Well,
deep down.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I kind of that's was kind of originally my first thought when
Mm-hmm.
I like that was the closest thing I felt like I could identify with. But I found this now, this is not sanctioned, this is not canon or anything, but I found this Tumblr post because I was trying to find out more about the houses because I
Yeah.
couldn't figure it out. And so I found this Tumblr post and like the way she describes Wampuses, I'm like, no, that's not me.
Interesting.
And the way
Send
she
me that.
describes, okay, I will.
I'm actually, yeah, I'm curious to see because I love like anything that adds to the lore of Ilvermorny. Again, that's why I
Yeah.
want a series on Ilvermorny so bad. Like, I mean, I've like said this before, but I love that they're doing a new series on Harry Potter, and it's like in a, HBO's taking it in a maybe a different direction. But I wish so badly they would just do like a Marauder series or a Founder
Yes.
series, or what I really want, maybe most of all, is an Ilvermorny series.
Yeah.
Like I think that
Same.
would be so fascinating because then there's a point to that as well where like the writers could do whatever they wanted. That's why like everyone's nervous for the series because like the as far as an adaptation is concerned, people are nervous that they're gonna like take liberties with it. And I'm like, if you just do a completely original series on Ilvermorny, I'm like you could take that anywhere you want it to go. It could be so fun.
Yes. Because there's
But
not 7 books on it.
yeah, exactly. I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But hopefully we'll get that before I die.
Yeah, I'm like, I really, really want to see that series.
Yeah, same. All right.
Yeah.
Can you rank the books for me? This is one of the most impossible
Uh,
questions of all time, but rank the books.
um, okay, yeah, I'm really bad at this. I am really bad at ranking things I love. Um,
Yeah. Honestly, that's a great answer in and of itself. That I don't want to rank something that I love because I don't think I should be able to choose favorite. It's like choosing a favorite kid.
right? Yeah. Okay, so but I've been thinking about this because I knew
Hmm.
you were going to ask me,
Yep.
and I still have ties.
Okay.
Um, so 1 and 2 I said are tied.
Okay.
I think it kind of irritates me that 2 is at in last place on like 99% of people's lists.
Yeah.
That just irks me. Like just bothers me. So like a little bit of it is maybe just feeling disgruntled about that, but also I do really think the mystery is really good.
Yeah, it is.
It's like a really interesting like
Yeah.
what is like and I don't know if this is the one plot that I learned as a kid
Hmm.
because I was like riding a bus somewhere and they were playing the third movie.
Ooh, great.
And
Great bus.
I like right? And I remembered like it stuck with me for
Hmm.
some reason. And so I remembered it, but I also very much remember being like, what? Water and spiders and like petrified and
Yeah.
like a chamber. Like, what does any of this have to do? Like, how is it all connected? Like, it's so strange. So I don't know if part of it is that it's the one plot that I remember that I like
Yeah.
saw through a child's eyes, sort of.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a really interesting story, and I love Harry's battle um, with oh my gosh, why can I not remember what the creature is
The
called right now? I'm
basilisk?
blanking. Yeah, the
Yeah,
basilisk.
yeah.
I loved that his battle with the
Yeah.
basilisk
It is
and Tom Riddle.
it weirdly is like an underrated book because it's on everyone's like least favorite books. I think as far as like a mystery is, it's just so well put together. I really think it's like one of the
Yes.
most probably the most underrated of all the books just because again it is at everyone's bottom. Um, but it's
Yeah, and in
so
their
complete.
defense, yes, it's a great standalone book.
Yeah. Honestly, I think, and that's maybe probably the reason why it's some people's least favorite because it's probably the best standalone. Like if you read each of these on its own, that one probably would be the best as far as like you could just read it at any point and like it's a completed story from front to back. It
I
doesn't,
think
I
though,
mean, it leaves things open, but I think, yeah, I don't know. What were you saying?
yeah, at the same time though, like that's I agree. at the same time, though, there's also so many important elements
Yeah.
that we are introduced to. That's another reason why I get offended that it's at the bottom of
Yeah.
people's list is like, oh my gosh, we meet Dobby for the first time.
Yep.
We find out about Tom Riddle for the first time. We find out why Hagrid was expelled. Like
Hmm.
it's just like packed with information that is essential to the rest of the story.
Yeah. Because that's like our first real encounter of a Horcrux. That's like our
Yeah.
first real encounter of how you destroy a Horcrux. Like so much goes back to
Yeah.
this book. Um,
Yes.
it
It's like a
goes,
keystone
yeah,
book.
it goes back to like the founders and like
Mhm.
the House of Gaunt. There's so much packed into this one
Yeah.
for like the
Yeah.
foundation that she laid in the next few. I think it's a
Yeah.
definitely an underrated book. It's a good one. I love that 1 and 2 are your top tied for your top. Why is 1? Just because it's like the intro to
No,
the
no.
story?
Those are in my last. That's my
Wait, wait,
last
wait,
spot.
wait.
Sorry.
We're sitting here arguing for why it's so good and it's still your last spot.
Because I know, but it's tied with one. I'm not putting it. Okay, it is last. You're right.
It's
I don't
so
really thought
great.
about. Okay, but no, but I mean, books that aren't Harry Potter are really in the last spot. So it's like
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah,
second
for sure. Yeah.
least favorite. Um, yeah, I mean, in people's defense, and I guess a little bit in my defense too. Like, I think it ends up in the last spot by like process of elimination. It's
Yeah.
not because people don't like it. It's just because they love the others even more. Um,
Yep.
yeah. 1, 2, like, I mean, how it could never
Yeah.
be last by itself. Like, you could never do that. It's such a special book.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed.
Um, but at the same time, like, I just love the other ones even more.
I
So
know.
if I had to, they would be
Yeah.
tied for last place.
Okay, keep going. Keep building it out. What's in 5th place now?
Okay, all right. 3,
Okay.
then 4,
Okay.
then 5. So
It
kind
just
of
goes in
chronological.
order.
Well, it just gets better and better,
It really
and then
does.
6 and 7 are tied. Um, I mean, you can't choose between 6 and 7. Come
Yeah.
on.
I'm
Um,
I'm actually kind of there with you. In the progression of the story, they really do get better, and that's like
right.
it was fun when I did it with Jen and Danny because that was what I said over and over and over again. Like the story really starts here. This is where it really gets good, and it's so true. And it's funny too in that like it's this story. It's just different from a lot of others because it just continually gets better. And like I don't know if anybody who's really read the books who like absolutely abhors the ending or like can't stand it or think it ended like in a bad way. Because I'm like this series, I read the first 2 Percy Jacksons and I'm like they're good, but I still don't think they hold a candle to this because this series after like the first book, I was like, okay, I am completely hooked. It's great. There's so much
Yeah.
depth in it. There's so much good stuff. The second book, I was like, oh, back on it. And then the third one, every single book, like in even different chapters and moments of the books, I remember like halfway through the third book being like, I need to finish a series right now. And I was like racing through these books as fast as I could. And I was only able to get to the 5th one before the books weren't out anymore. And I had to like, wait for a few months to years before these books came out. And I'm like, every single time, every single chapter was better than the one before. Like it was one that I just could
Yeah.
not put down. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
with you. I like your ranking of literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
That's generous. I know it's a terrible ranking, and I will say, I feel like for the last time I read slash listened,
Mm-hmm.
I think 5 was my favorite for that read.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that like kind of long haul as general, and like I think at the end of the day, I think as I keep as I keep going in my Harry Potter journey, like I think it's gonna be pretty much chronological.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I think it also just I know you've talked about this too in the other Tamale talks, like you said you have multiple lists, I think,
Yeah. Yep.
for like, oh, this is my nostalgia list, and this is
Yep.
and I think at different times in your life too. So I
Mm-hmm.
think 5, yeah, 5 was I think my favorite this time. I think it's almost like I'm not ready for 6 and 7.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah.
Like
I'm the same.
I feel like 5 is where I'm at. like in my journey, my Harry
Yeah.
Potter journey, and I think it kind of parallels with my life too, because of the trauma that I've
Yeah.
experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just really can relate to Harry, and I kind of love I feel like if shit is hitting the fan, like that 5 is the top of my list for if shit is hitting
Yes.
the fan,
If
pick
you're
up
going,
5.
yeah, honestly, it is. Oh, I love that you said that because it's one of the books too that like if someone is going through a miserable time in their life, I'm like, it's such a good book just to like, I don't know. It doesn't explain, the bad things that happen in your life, but it's just like a buddy. It's like a friend. Like you
Yeah.
commiserate with it. There's so much depth in it. Like Luna has so much depth. Even the idea of like, if you've seen death, you've seen like you experience the world in a different way, and the idea of thestrals. I'm like, there's so much beauty to that book. Whereas, yes, it's agony to get through the Umbridge chapters, but if you can get through that, there is like that book is just it's so like juicy. There's so much good stuff in that.
I actually think even for me, the Umbridge chapters this last read
Mm.
were I didn't have a hard time getting through those. I
Yeah.
mean, I got angry,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
but
Yeah.
like there's so much defiance in
Yeah.
Hogwarts, and I
Oh,
love it. Like I just was
yes.
drinking that up. I was like, "Yes,
Like
fight back."
the
Like,
castle itself is defiant against her. It's incredible.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, Fred and George
Yep.
and just Harry like just being like, "F it," and just like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Voldemort's back. I fought him, just like devil may care. I just love it. I love
Yeah.
and then sometimes too there's like more clever, like subtle rebellions, like
Yeah.
little rebellions, like McGonagall telling Peeves it unscrews the
Oh,
other way.
yep.
Like I love that's one of my favorite moments
Yes.
in the whole series.
Because it's even something that like Edgar Allan Poe said that like I love that book so much because there's a quote from him that says like, oh, the darker that I make a book, the more brightly the light can shine in it, or something like that. And I'm like, that it really
Yeah.
is one of the darkest books. But I'm like, in those moments of
Yeah.
defiance, you have those moments of hope where it's like, oh, okay, I just have to keep holding on for another like, few chapters. And then another moment pops up and you're like, okay, just keep holding on, keep holding on.
Yeah.
It's a great like, I don't know the word, like balm for life or something like that. A great
Yeah.
parable on how to live life in defiance. I think
It
it's
brings up a
great.
lot of yeah, it brings up a lot of questions in it. There's like a such a wide it's like all the emotions.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
It's like the full range.
Mm-hmm. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. It's yeah. I return to the fifth book because it's not a lot of people's absolute favorite, but it definitely is in different reads that I've done. It's definitely been my favorite, or it's like the top on certain. It's the top on my list of I think weirdly best written books. I think that book was a
Mm.
masterpiece for how she wrote it. Um,
Yeah.
for all the small little intricate things that you just said, like every little act of defiance that they have in there, all like the depth of a thestral for what like Harry's going through, like the angst that Harry's going through. It's so good. It is.
And the character development like Luna,
Oh my gosh, I know. Or like Luna
meeting
comes, yeah,
Luna.
like Luna, she comes in the fifth book, and you're like, who is this character? Why am I introduced to a new character? And you love her like immediately. She's like, she's people's favorite character. Like a ton of people,
Yeah.
their absolute favorite. She's such a great character.
I
Oh,
love Luna so
yeah,
much. Yeah. Yeah.
and she just has so many good moments to like, even in the midst, like, even in the midst of everything that Harry is going through, Luna is one of those people who has the weird ability to comfort someone and not make them not like feel awkward about it. Like, if something terrible happens in your life, like all these people, they come up and they say certain things and they say the wrong things. Like Luna is unapologetic about some of the things that she says. Like even the moment, I think this is a moment in the books too. But in the movies particularly, which I feel like um she captured Luna so perfectly. Um but she has the one moment at the very end where she just like she says, I think I heard about your uncle, and she like grabs Harry's hand or something like that. And I'm like, just a simple emotion like that, she knows how to comfort people in a way that I feel like is ethereal and otherworldly, in a way that most people don't. because most people are afraid of certain things to say. I'm like, she just cuts through it and is just so good. She's so good. I love her so much.
I think it's like her lack of self-consciousness. Like
Yeah.
she is not
Yeah.
she's just able to just be in the moment and yeah, just not really she's not self-absorbed.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That's a great word for it.
So thoroughly not self-absorbed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually so that is one of my favorite moments in the whole series as well.
Yeah.
I assume like I haven't seen movie 5. I haven't seen most of the movies.
Whoa. Okay.
Um, I think I think oh, I'm sorry. Earlier I just realized like I was talking about Chamber and I said 3 and I meant 2 because
Oh,
that's the
sorry.
one that I saw on the bus. But I think I've only seen 1, 2, and like part of 3 and like maybe one of the later ones. Definitely not 5 though.
Do you plan on
Um,
seeing it, or are you like, no, this,
no,
I love that.
no, I'm good
I love
because
that. Yeah, explain that.
I well, I think you know the like special effects are so bad. And if you
Yeah.
I think if you see them when you're younger and like when it like special effects were just more like that,
Hmm.
that was the best they got or close to it. You kind of can still see it through those eyes.
Yeah.
But because I didn't see them until recently, except for 2,
Hmm.
I can't see past the special effects. That's one reason.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you
I'm
on some of
sorry.
them. No, on some of them, they're pretty lacking. Yeah.
The other reason though is that I just love the book so much and I love the world. I love just kind of me in the book, like what what I see and feel when it's just me in the book.
Yeah.
And like I have mental pictures
Yep.
and I
You.
know from experience that if I watch the movies, those will be taken over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
You.
those some of
You.
those mental pictures I won't be able to recall them anymore or not as strongly. I'm going to start envisioning the scenes from the movie and I
Yeah.
don't want to.
You don't want to give those up because as soon as you give
No.
those up, it's hard to get them back.
Yeah, so I'm going to have quite the dilemma with the show
Yeah, that is
because
gonna be a dilemma. Oof.
I'm going to really want to watch it, but part of me is actually going to really not want to watch it
Huh. That's tough. Yeah,
because of that.
you're in a predicament there, because I mean,
Yeah.
when I was going through this, I saw the movies paired to the book, so like I was just caught in the whirlwind of it. And then I talk about
Yeah.
this all the time, but the reason that I love the Jim K illustrated version is because it got me back to
Mhm.
thinking about how I initially thought of the characters.
Mhm.
So like
Okay. Yeah.
I lost that ability to think in who in my head I pictured Harry and Ron and Hermione and all these great characters to be originally in my head, because
Yeah.
they were a lot of just the movie versions, and I didn't like that. And I like had subtle differences between certain ones, but then when I read the Jim K ones, I was like, that's like who I picture. That's like going
Mm.
back to how I initially pictured Harry, Ron, Hermione, Lupin, all these other people. And it like got me back to that, which is really, really nice, but it took me like 10 years to get
Yeah.
there. It's
That's neat.
yeah. But
Yeah, I
that's a
will
predicament.
say yeah, I mean my image like my mental pictures of the characters and everything, they are influenced by the
Yeah,
movies
yeah, for
because,
sure.
you
Yeah.
see
You can't
you
avoid
s-
them.
yeah, yeah. But I'm fine with that. It's kind of like
Yeah.
a hybrid
Yeah,
of
seriously.
like just my imagination and the book and the movies. I'm okay with that, but I don't want to be like totally replaced.
Yeah, I
Like
like that.
I like the Hunger Games, I like the books. I don't
Yep.
like the movies.
Yeah,
And now I can't read the books without seeing the characters from the
yeah.
movies and I don't like it at all. Like
Yeah.
they are not at
Just
all how I imagined them.
just ruins it. I know it ruins it in your head.
Yeah.
It's so devastating.
Yeah. I'm hoping it'll go away eventually, but we'll see.
I don't know. Yeah, that's always a tough part of this kind of thing. Like these movie characters. Like I loved the Chronicles of Narnia growing up, and then I hated the movies. Like I still don't love the movies because I'm like, none of those characters, none of them feel very close to how I
Hmm.
picture them in my head. Um, So I always like revisit that, and I'm like excited if they do come up with a series soon on that. There's like a ton that they could do with it. I feel like it'd be. I'm interested in that, just because none of the characters are exactly the same as how I envisioned them originally. So, but
What
Harry,
about Liam Neeson as Aslan? Like his
yeah,
voice, that's pretty good, right?
he did have a good Aslan voice. I will give him that.
Yeah,
That was definitely solid.
yeah.
Actually, when I said that, I was thinking in my head like Aslan's depiction was pretty
The
good.
kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I like Edmund. I don't like the other ones that much.
Yeah.
Uh, there was some problems that I had for all the characters, and they were like a little bit different because a lot of them were just voice actors, but like Prince Caspian was not at all who I thought Prince Caspian was. That when I saw that movie, I was like, I couldn't even watch it because it was so different from
Disappointed.
so different from how I envisioned
Oh,
Prince
that's a
Caspian.
bad sign.
I know. So maybe one day they'll come out with a series on that, and I'll be happy, but not at the moment. Um,
Yeah, I don't know how we're gonna like I don't know if I'm gonna just see like previews of the show and then I'm gonna base it off of that. Like, do I want more of that or
yeah,
not? Like for for Harry Potter
yeah,
for the
you're gonna
series.
like take it a minute at a time. You're gonna watch the first minute and be like, all right, can I go on to the next minute? Is it gonna be good? Do I want this person ruined in my in
I
my
don't
show?
think I have that much self control,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
If you start watching it, it's gonna be a whirlwind. It's gonna just be all there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
So I'm
tough.
gonna have to really think about it.
Speaking of that, do you have a favorite character?
Ah, I'm really, like I said, really bad at ranking things I love.
Yeah. This is a tough one. You
Uh,
can give me a few.
okay, well, that's good. I have like okay, in first place, like my absolute favorites, Dumbledore, Harry, Snape, Luna, Neville, Hermione.
You can't
I'm
argue with that.
sorry.
No. You cannot argue with any of those. It's
I
a great
can't.
list. It's a great list.
Dumbledore, Harry, Snape, Luna, Neville, Hermione. I mean, I tried really hard to narrow it down more than that, and I just didn't. And I have a number two list that I think is just as long.
Give me that list now.
Fred and George, Lupin, Sirius, Molly, Ginny, McGonagall.
Wait, is Ron not in your top one or two
No,
list? What the
he's
heck?
not.
Are you
Good
kidding
catch. I'm
me?
sorry. I'm
He's
sorry.
so
Yeah.
good though. I love him. Okay.
He's an essential part of the trio, but he's just
Not an
not one of
essential
my
part of your
favorites.
trio.
No, I have like I don't know, like a double, like, I don't even know how many I have,
That's
but
so
yeah, no,
funny.
he's not even there. Um, yeah, sorry about that.
That's kind of devastating. All right, why are all those first characters your favorites? Give me some reasoning for it.
Um, I just feel so like that first list, like I just feel so much love and affection for those characters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hermione, she's just so clever and she has a heart of gold. Like
She's
she's
great.
this like really she has so much conviction. She's like a
Ugh,
really strong inner North Star. Like she knows
yeah.
exactly what the right thing is pretty much all the time.
Hmm,
And when she doesn't, she's so like if she's unsure, she's so thoughtful about it. Um
hmm.
and she's just such a amazing friend and she's kind of a badass too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's
By
incredible.
the end for
Yeah.
sure. Neville, I mean, I love
You don't
his
have to
arc.
explain your Neville love to
Okay,
me because
he's
I
one of your
fully get
favorites, right?
it. He's the greatest. He's the best.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when he comes out from behind the painting of Ariana, like that's one of my
Yeah.
favorite moments. And then he's like walking them back in the
Yeah.
tunnel and telling them like, he's just, I love him so
His
much. He's
character
such a
arc
rebel.
is unrivaled. It's the best. Oh, I love
Yes,
him.
yeah, and like I just love how like unassuming he is in the
Yeah.
begin, like, and just it. I mean, he has a heart of gold. Like, talk about like one of the most pure characters.
And he's someone that I love too because he truly is one of the most pure characters, and he has been through one of the most difficult times out of any student. Like none of the students can really compare with some
Yeah,
of the stuff that he's been through. And
yeah.
weirdly, I love that he's with Hannah Abbott because Hannah Abbott's maybe the only other one that can really compare some of what he's gone through
Hmm.
with uh with Neville. And then like obviously Harry's gone through a lot, so like Harry kind of is lumped into that. But some of these kids have gone through more in the first few years of their life than most people will go through in lifetimes. And Neville's one of
Yeah.
those. I'm like, he has just been through it, and he's able to
Yeah.
still be so resilient and so pure is as astounding as Harry's situation where he's abused and he's still able to be so like sassy and still so good and endure through that. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was another Tamale talk that I was listening to recently where you were talking, I want to say it was either Lana or James,
Mm-hmm.
and you were talking about book 5 in the ministry and how Neville just was just like very, very brave, like just
Yeah.
putting himself
Yep.
beside Harry all the time or in
Mm-hmm.
front of people or rushing off to help someone. Um, and you were comparing Neville and Harry and talking about really how similar they are.
Yeah.
And I honestly, it didn't like that. That gave me like a new level of seeing that, of like really
Mm.
seeing how similar they are. And it's so interesting that he could have been the one that
Yeah.
Voldemort chose that aligned with the prophecy. That's just so fascinating.
Yep. I think there's
Um,
probably some
yeah.
fan fictions that deal with that. Like, what if he was chosen
Oh,
rather
yeah,
than Harry? I'm sure there's,
probably.
but yeah, he really is.
Yeah.
He's he's just so good. He's my favorite. He really is so comparable to Harry. He's so different from Harry, but there's so many good comparisons, and so there's so many like good qualities that they
Yeah.
both share.
That's something I really love to do is like compare and contrast
Yeah,
the characters. Like, I feel like there's just some really interesting.
yeah,
Like, I think Umbridge is a great one to hold up to other people, like to other
yeah.
characters. Like,
Seriously.
um, her and Percy. It's like that's very interesting to me to compare. And her
Yeah.
and Snape. Her and Snape is one that I realized recently. Like, oh, that's fast. They're almost like complete,
Yeah.
like
Seriously.
mirrors of each other or something. Because like she is sticky sweet on the outside and pretends to be
Huh.
a good person
That's a
and
great contrast.
and like on the right side, but she doesn't have she doesn't have any kind of, you know, moral compass
Yeah. Inwardly, she is
internally.
rotten. Yeah, yeah. She is miserable
Yeah.
and reprehensible.
And
But
yeah, and it's like she's really power hungry actually. She doesn't
mm.
really I feel like she doesn't come off that way on the surface.
That's interesting that you say that
That's
she
not
has
how
no
she presents
moral.
herself.
Yeah, and she has no moral compass inwardly too. Like she flits between 20 different things in these books of like who she needs to follow. It's like whoever she can gain the most power for. So like her moral compass is
Yes.
literally going in circles for like wherever
Right.
the next power source can come from. That's where she goes. Rather than Snape, who
Right.
like for all his flaws has a clear
Mission.
moral mission and moral compass. Like he knows what his
Yeah.
life needs to. He knows what he needs to do.
Yeah, I don't know if moral compass and Snape
Yeah. Yeah,
if
yeah,
that's the
yeah, for
best
sure.
phrase,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I know what you mean
yeah,
though.
he has a mission.
Yeah.
And
Maybe it's not a moral compass, a mission compass.
yeah,
Because
yeah. And
it's like
yeah.
guiding him throughout the books. He knows what he needs to do. He knows this is like his life's goal is this. Rather than Umbridge, who's
Yeah,
all over the place.
and the motivation is clear too. Like
Yeah.
it's all about Lily.
Yep. I love that.
And I don't know. I don't want to sometimes too I hesitate to describe the characters and their motivations because I'm like, I don't know if I really if it's so nuanced. They
Mm.
are such nuanced characters and I feel like I'm still learning them. And I'm enjoying like that's something it's kind of I had a moment where I was like, okay, I kind of see the Ravenclaw thing now because
Mm.
I was thinking about this like that or just noticing that I am when I will have like a question about some aspect of the book and I don't want to Google it. And
Yeah.
so I won't. But I'm like, keep it in my head. And like, I either want to hear it from another
Yeah.
fan. I want to hear it. I want to learn it in a conversation
That's
in
such a
news.
Ravenclaw thing.
Right? I'm like, okay, I see it. Because I'd always been like, no, I'm just not clever enough to be a Ravenclaw. And
It's like
but
true
then I
wisdom.
thought, I know people are like, well, that's not necessarily like the best, the best. That's not necessarily like the marker. Um, but I think then I thought about like I do really love learning.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'm actually kind of approaching like my Harry Potter journey a little bit like a Ravenclaw, I
Yeah.
guess. Like I'm like, I don't want to just like Google it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to like it's a process and I'm
Yes.
enjoying it and I want to, yeah, learn about it in a
That's the best way to tackle it. I think you're nailing it. I think that it's like I think after you read it once, you read it like first. You almost read it through the lens of like a Gryffindor. You're like reading it and you're like, oh, this is so fun. And then I feel like after that, it comes to a point where you start reading it like a Ravenclaw, where you're like studying every little
yeah,
part in the book. Like I'm at a point because
yeah.
I'm like deeply a Hufflepuff. I'm reading it because like I love spending time with some of these characters. Like I want to just be in these
Mm.
classrooms and I want to be in Hogwarts and I want to like it's like loyalty to the books. I just keep reading it because I just love these people so much. And I guess if you're a Slytherin, there is probably a point where I'm going to read it as a Slytherin. Just I read it every, like once a year just because that's what I do. It's like my ambition. I'm going to do
Okay,
it.
I have a thought.
Yeah.
I have a thought about that. Okay. So I love that. So if you're like really focused on the adventure and like, oh, what's gonna happen next? Yeah,
Yeah.
fight, fight. Like you're reading it like Gryffindor. If you're like focused on the characters and getting to know the characters
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
celebrating them, you're reading it like a Hufflepuff. If you're like analyzing things and looking for a little like the plant
Yeah.
symbolism, like you're reading it
The
like a
plant
Ravenclaw.
symbolism. Yeah, yeah,
I've got
absolutely.
it. I've got one for Slytherin, and because at first I was like thinking, oh, I'm just gonna be like Slytherin. I don't even know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't understand Slytherin. And then I thought about that my quiz result, and I'm like, you know what though? I think I have an idea. So I feel like I'm learning. I'm learning about myself.
Mhm.
And when I read, like it's been okay. So I'm just I'm gonna get brutally honest here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
um, so when I was 19, so I'm a domestic violence survivor.
Hmm.
So when I was 19 was when I first got into an abusive relationship.
Hmm.
And so I really did not get to finish growing up.
Hmm.
And so I think right now, and part of the reason I think five is my favorite book at this in this period of my life, or during my last read through at least, is because like there's like a lot of growing pains.
Yeah.
And you can really like Harry's immaturity is kind of on display. He's definitely an angsty teenager.
Yep.
And so I feel like that's part of why I'm really drawn to five right now,
Hmm.
is because I'm kind of getting to finish growing up now.
Hmm.
And so I think all that to say, I think that if you're reading it like a Slytherin, maybe, or at least my version of Slytherin, my 20% Slytherin,
Yeah, yeah,
is reading it to like figure out some things for
absolutely.
myself, about my own life.
Yep.
Because I think that's something that I've realized about Slytherin too, is that they are good at prioritizing themselves.
Yeah, they're really
And
self-reflective.
well, and I think part of the reason I've had such a Slytherin prejudice is because I grew up, I think growing up in the South in an evangelical home
Hmm.
as a girl, it's like selfish is like the worst thing you could be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
And so I think that's part of it, is like I have this inner like I don't know how to like I'm learning now
Hmm.
how to stand up for myself more and prioritize
I
myself
love
and my
that.
needs more and be like less of a like work on address my people pleasing and like why that is.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think that is one of the best things about Slytherins is like I don't know. It's still I'm still on such a journey with it, but
It's
like
so good.
just kind of separating out like selfishness from taking care of yourself.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And that's like there's healthy levels of each of these Like, I mean, it's like the personality
Yes.
test. There's healthy levels of them and there's unhealthy levels. And I'm like, okay, a healthy version of a Slytherin knows the fine balance between like really truly taking care of themselves versus like when it actually is selfishness. And I'm like,
Yeah.
the fine line. And oh, that's actually brilliant. That's so brilliant. I love one of my favorite parts of these books, this series too, is because like I love other series for different reasons. Um, but this one, when I read it, it it almost I almost can't help but learn about myself. There's so much in here that is like geared toward helping kids deal with situations that they're going through in really in like very subtle ways, and like giving them words to be able to describe some of the things that they're going through and some of like the horrors that they're going through. But then there's also a point to it where I read it as an adult and I'm still getting those things. So I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a good children's book to me. I'm like, if you're reading it as an adult and you're getting completely and totally different things and you're actually able to unpack some of the things that has happened in your past, like it's a brilliant piece of literature. Like some people may make fun of me for that, but I'm like, I think that this is one of the most important pieces of literature. Like everyone knows my like obsession with children's literature, and I think this is one of the best because it really teaches people how to um, understand certain things that they're going through in terminology that they can use. And like for everything that you're going through, like for you to know the difference between um, to like know that it's okay to take care of yourself and that it's not selfish to prioritize yourself. That's like all that you need. That's perfect. That's like a perfect series. Just someone giving you the steps to be able to do that. I think it's incredible. I love that.
And that's just one thing I've gotten from it.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, and it's like it's usually, it's like I'm learning, I don't know, it's almost like a parallel. Like
Mm.
I'm learning things, at work and in this situation and that situation, and then I'm learning things as I'm reading Harry
Yeah.
Potter.
Yeah. Seriously. Yeah.
um yeah, and it's like there's usually like I'm like, "Oh, that's like this in Harry Potter." Like I'm like, "Oh, I'm connecting the dots here,"
Yeah.
like, and it's just like lighting up my brain,
Yeah.
and it's amazing.
Sometimes I think it's maybe a little unhealthy for how much I think about Harry Potter, where like things will happen in my normal life and I'm like, that what would Ron do in this situation? What would Neville do? Oh,
Nah, that's not unhealthy.
yeah, yeah. I think it's great. I think it's so good. I love what you said though. I like reading it through a Slytherin mindset like that. And like it changes how I view Slytherins a little bit. That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, maybe it's like, what am I getting from Harry
Yeah.
Potter? What am I getting from
Yeah.
this book?
And it's not wrong to ask that question. It's great to ask that question. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Because like at the end of the day, I feel like a book should transform you in a way. Like it's weird because I think about this question sometimes for like what the difference is between like something that's a piece of propaganda versus something that is like an actual piece of art. And it's like it's always like pushing some kind of message, but there's always some kind of message that
Hmm.
any author is peddling or pushing. Like the core of Harry Potter is like, a core message of love, and you can argue that she's pushing that message onto other people, but I'm like, it's a good message to push onto people. Sometimes I think the difference between what propaganda is versus what art is just the majority of people for what they think and believe. And everyone loves the idea of love and how you really like that's like a core tenet to all humans. And um, I just think of that in terms of like with a good uh, with a good piece of children's literature or a good piece of literature at all, it's going to transform the way that you think. It should be able to change you in some way. But it's tough because there's so many books out there. Like I have a bunch of children's books, like a few children's books right here, and like there's a few at the top. But some of them are clearly peddling a message, and they're so blatant about
Yeah.
it. And
Yes, I know what you mean.
some of them are just like a fun story. And like yes, it's trying to get you to understand something, but it's like almost harder to parse out what they're trying to get you to believe and think because it's in a story form. And I'm like, to me that seems more excusable. Or I'm like, if I just want I could read this as a fun story and just enjoy the story as it is. And again, that's like Harry Potter. If I want to read it just like to read it, I could read it and enjoy the story. And like I feel like you're always going to be changed by a story in some way. But especially some of the things that I think Joe is teaching readers is like the core of a um like even going back to like this idea of a moral compass, like the idea of selflessness versus selfishness, like what that actually looks like self-care, thrown into that whole idea, like really taking care of yourself, because in the fifth book that's what Harry really needs to do. He needs to take care of himself. Like even the idea
Mm,
of like
yeah.
what how death plays into people's life, how like
Hmm.
depression plays into people's lives. Like I know tons of my friends who love the Dementor chapters because it's like a coping mechanism for how they deal with depression. And like and there's so many good parts in this that really like infuse people with how to live life. It's like good instructions for how to live life.
Yeah, I think part of why it doesn't fit, like, propaganda does not fit it in any way, like,
Mm,
as a descriptor, is because I think, like, she maybe some of these things the author is even wrestling with
yeah,
herself.
yeah, honestly, yeah.
You know, like, she's not trying to, like, force it to be black and white.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you get to kind of read and really think through and question and wonder and wrestle with it.
Yes. And this is gonna be the longest Tamale talk we have because I feel like I have so much to talk about. But there's even points in the series too where I just mentioned this in like the latest video. I did like a video on why I think Imperius is the worst curse. There's moments that
Mm,
I think that she's written and she's underwritten them so well where she isn't infusing her meaning on how to like get through a situation. It is just her essentially like laying out a story or like showing you like a shade of how this can be, and then people whoever with whatever experience they have and like how they live life, they parse the meaning out of that. So I was talking about this with the three unforgivable curses. I'm like, if you've gone through any kind of like torture, obviously like you're gonna look at the Cruciatus curse and say that's dark, that's evil. And I was talking about this in terms of like the love potion. In my estimation, it's one of the darkest things in all of Harry Potter. I
mm,
think it's so reprehensible. I hate it. I hate the idea of it. But it's played off as like a joke. And I think she threw that in there purposely because she's like Joe is also like a domestic abuse survivor, and some of the things that she went through she like infuses in the meaning of the story, but she does it in such a subtle way that it's almost like a nod to other people who have been through some of that kind of stuff, where she's like, I know some of the stuff that you're dealing with.
mm.
I'm going to throw you some of these like little tidbits, and then you can parse out the rest of the meaning for yourself. So if again going back to even what you said, it's like less propaganda because she's working some of these things out herself, rather than like being like, hey, believe this. This is how you do it. This is
Right.
how you get through something. It's not exactly like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, also with domestic violence, relationships, there your brain does funny things to
Mm-hmm.
survive
Yeah.
certain situations, you know? So, you will normalize things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, she may very well not even like I don't know, maybe she wouldn't even like the concept of a love potion is, very could be, a metaphor for coercive control.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if she intended it that way, but it could even be kind of, subconscious.
Yeah. Seriously. Yeah. Yeah. Honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like interesting subconscious stuff that she probably embedded in these books. It's good.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm not a very good writer, so I don't know, but especially when it like character development, that just seems impossible to me. And especially on this level. I mean, I
Yeah.
just her characters are so amazing.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it's kind of like there's some quote from a sculptor that talks about, and it's true, like I think marble actually has a grain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so like there I think maybe even multiple quotes from sculptors saying like I'm finding what's already there. Like I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
allowing
Yeah.
it to reveal itself.
Yeah.
And I I wouldn't be surprised if at some point the story and especially the characters are even a little bit like that. Like they
Yeah.
end up leading you.
Yep. I think yeah, I've heard other authors talk about that, and they say if you just create a character that's interesting enough and you drop them in a scenario, the story writes itself. And I'm sure
Mm,
that happened with her, where she was like developing these characters to such
yeah.
extent and to such depth that like the story, I'm sure like chapters just flew by. And I
Yeah.
know she had a tough time writing certain chapters, but I'm like, those are the ones where she like wants to word everything perfectly. And, those are like some of the greatest
Yeah.
chapters that we have. But like other chapters, I'm like, they probably flew by because she knew exactly what this character was going to do in this situation and how they were going to act. And like, it's
Yeah.
just great. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like they have a life of their own. Like I
Yeah.
love the phrases people use about like it has like I've heard people say that before. Like this
Mm,
is it's taken on a life of its own,
mm.
and she knows that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. Now, speaking of that, what are you can give me a list of 20 things for this one too.
Oh gosh.
What are your favorite moments? What is your favorite moment or
Okay.
moments?
Okay. So, well, and we didn't finish talking about Luna, but this is
Yeah.
a good matchup anyways because well, and I think we were starting to talk about this moment as well because I think you referenced it in the movie 5,
Mm-hmm.
but in Order of the Phoenix when Harry is well, Luna, I don't actually remember what Harry's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think he might have just finished talking to um Nearly Headless Nick, and
Okay.
then Luna is like looking for her things, right? People have hidden them.
Yeah.
That conversation between Luna and Harry,
It's one of the best.
it's so good. That's one
Yep.
of my favorite moments, and I've cried every single time I've read it.
It is
Like,
so
just
good.
Luna's just like so serene
Yeah.
and compassionate, and just everything's just simple, like with her in a way, and she just like gets to the heart of it,
Yep.
and
It was exactly
I
what
don't
Harry
know,
needed
it's
in the fifth
like
book too.
yeah. It's, like, comforting and painful at the same time,
Yeah.
and just the way she says, like, just with such peace, "We'll see them again."
Yep.
And, like, he's like, "Will we?" And she's like, "You heard them. I know you
Yeah.
heard them too, like, just behind the curtain." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Like, that just
I know. It cuts so deep.
yeah.
That's one of my favorite moments again because like Luna is one of those people she's been talking about, like all these weird creatures that no one thinks exist, and then all of a sudden she says this, and you're like, no, she knows what she's talking about in this instance.
Yeah.
She's right,
Yeah.
and it's so she's so lovely. Ugh.
I wanna I wanna hang out with Luna.
I know,
I think
I
I
know.
also kinda wanna I want that's who I wanna be when I grow up. I wanna be Luna.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was gonna ask this one even when you were talking about your favorite characters. What character do you think that you identify most with?
Um, that's so funny because that's something I wanted to ask you, actually. I was like, this is a good question to talk about and Tamale talk because that's something that interests me with Harry Potter is, like, the
Yeah,
kind of the personality stuff,
yeah,
the
absolutely.
houses, but also the characters. And characters is, like yeah, to as, like, almost like a personality test.
Yeah,
Um, hmm, I I definitely feel like I have a little bit of Luna in me.
eh,
Um,
love that.
I think probably Neville, and then honestly, like, I've kind of thought, like, Ron kind of gets on my nerves, and then one day I was like, "You know what? I think I'm like Ron," and that's Um,
So when
so
when Ron makes it onto your top favorite characters list, then we'll know that everything's gonna be healthy. You like Ron, and
Yeah, I think definitely, like, I know somebody posted that chart, I wanna say it was Chewy,
yeah,
just to give credit, and so he posted, like, a chart that's, like, quadrants of the houses, like Gryffindor, Hufflepuff,
yeah,
Ravenclaw, and Slytherin, and, like, who's, like, a Hufflegriff or whatever. Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
that's not how people say it, but,
yeah,
like, who's kinda in between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff, you
yeah, yeah.
know? And so I feel like a lot of those characters I feel like but again, I'm Hufflepuff's third according to the quiz, so
Yeah.
who knows? But from my perspective, I feel like I'm kind of there, like Hagrid, Ron, Neville,
Yeah.
and then a little bit Luna. But yeah, like because I feel like it's kind of like, um, the clumsy, awkward folks,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
but like they've got good hearts,
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yep. I love that. That's a great description. All the clumsy people, but all the clumsy people in this series have good hearts. They're all great. Like Tonks is
Yeah.
another one, has a great heart.
Yeah, and I hesitate to say Neville because I'm not that good-hearted, but
Hmm.
just that he's kind of unassuming, but when shit hits the fan,
Yeah.
he's got your back.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
he's so great. Oh, I love Neville.
What about you?
It's definitely different in different phases of my life. I probably in high school I was definitely like the Oliver Wood type. Um
Oh, really?
like only kind of caring about sports, probably my head like only in that, and I was like very into that. Um but I've definitely um gone in different phases. Like at the moment in my life now, I think Neville. I mean, I say that because he's like my favorite character, and I just love him because he's like a plant nerd. He loves plants. He's like a little like nerdy. He he likes this weird side of research. Like he gets kind of obsessive over certain things. Like someone in his life told him he was good at something, and then he like fanned that into flame, and it was like very he like made that his like driving force. He's just fiercely loyal. Been through a lot in his life, so I love him. I definitely got some Ron in me. Definitely like maybe just because I think she's an incredible character too. Tonks is one of my favorites. Um, so it is such a fascinating question because I think there's different times in my life where I've definitely identified with the character more than others. I haven't thought about the last few months or years for like what character would I identify most with. Um, yeah, I'll have to get back. That's an interesting question. Maybe I'll throw that in the Discord for what
Yeah.
character everyone identifies most with at this point
Yeah.
currently in their life and why. Hmm.
With Snape, I had a moment recently, like I was I'm really drawn to Snape,
Mm.
and I feel so heartbroken for him. Like
Hmm.
I don't I just it just kills me.
That's a hot
Like
take. That's a hot take.
I want a happy ending for him so
Yeah, I
badly.
know. I am 100% there with you, but it's a hot take to have.
Okay. Okay. Well, I feel like it's just kind of like it's like one of those things. It is divisive, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you're
Yep.
usually you
Yeah.
either like really don't like Snape or you
Yeah.
really like him. Um, so I'm in the really like him camp.
Yep.
Well, and then there's also some people who are like just a little weird about it.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Oh yeah.
that's the third category. Um, but yeah, I've been like kind of harsh about like geez, like this is one of your problems here. Like you got way too much compassion for this guy and he's a
Yeah,
jerk.
yeah.
Um, but I think recently I just was thinking about how he grew up. I think yeah, I don't know, just feeling a little more like, okay, yeah, I get it. I think he has just been really, you know, rejected and
Yeah.
alone a lot
Yeah.
and abandoned a lot.
Yep.
And I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been through the
So
ringer.
yeah. So recently I've been feeling more like, maybe it's more than just feeling really compassionate for him, like, oh, like, and feeling like I want to like help him, I want
Yeah.
someone to help him. Maybe it's also a little bit of just of relating to him too.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, he's definitely a divisive character, but I think he's one of the more fascinating. I think he is so there's such depth to that. And again, he's one of the most divisive because I think he's like such an interesting character that people like to dive into and talk about.
Yeah, I don't know why he's so nasty to the
Yeah,
kids.
yeah,
That is, I
yeah,
don't get that. That's hard
yeah. Yep.
because I like feel like I care about him. It's
Yeah.
like if you cared about somebody and they're just being
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
awful to somebody,
Yeah.
like why?
You're like a Lily.
Um,
You're like, why are you, doing all these nasty things? Why are you hanging out with these people, Snape? Come on, get better.
yeah,
Do better.
yeah, and he could,
I know,
and
he really
like
could.
he does do better in a sense, like
Yep.
on like
Ultimately,
kind
yeah.
of a grander scale. It's almost kind of like the for the greater good sort of a thing. Like on the large scale of the war,
Hmm.
he does the right thing, but it's
Yeah.
like he can't contribute to like a positive environment at Hogwarts in his day-to-day
Yeah.
life.
That's so, yeah, that's so. I would love for like a psychologist or like, therapist to like do a deep dive on him. And like,
Yes.
I would actually, that'd be a fascinating YouTube series where like a therapist or like a
Yeah.
psychiatrist like would go through Harry Potter and like evaluate each of the characters. Like, give me like a
You should do
YouTube series
that.
where like a team of them do that. That'd be so interesting. Huh.
Yeah. That'd be
Maybe
great. I
maybe
would
I'll
love that.
maybe I'll figure that out, put that together some in some way.
Yeah.
um okay, two more questions, two more quick ones. What do you have any hot takes?
I think any hot takes were probably
Yeah,
covered,
yeah, yeah.
like,
We covered a few hot
really
takes.
liking
Yeah.
Snape,
Yeah,
not really wanting to see the show,
yeah. That
not
is,
wanting to see
yeah,
the movies.
that's a very hot take.
Yeah.
Um yeah, I think we covered a lot of good hot takes. And then this is the final one, but what has this series meant to you?
Uh, well, I think I had a couple thoughts about that because
Mm.
I heard you ask it and
Mm-hmm.
Tamale talked before. Um, so I wrote down a couple things. Um, one thing I wrote down is I think it's yet to be determined.
I love that.
um,
It's still,
and another,
it's like in the
yeah, it's
process, it
still,
still has meaning to
hmm
it. It's still growing in meaning. I love that.
yeah, it's like I'm definitely on a journey with it.
Mm.
I wrote down it reminds me of the best in me, the best in others, the best in life.
Mm.
Um, that sounds kind of cheesy when you put it all
That's
together like that,
no,
but
that's incredible. That's such a good line.
and then I think also didn't write this down, but just it's been a really significant part of the process of healing for me,
Hmm.
and it's been a refuge, like a way to escape, a place to escape to.
Mm-hmm.
But then like I go to, a book to one of the books to escape and then I find that I'm actually processing. Like I
Yeah.
don't even realize it. Or like, I'm crying for Harry and I find some compassion for myself in that moment. Um so it's been both an escape and a tool to process and make connections.
That's incredible. That's so good. Because it is um shocking that it can do both of those so well without you even noticing. Like
Yeah.
I get hit with moments in this book sometimes where I'm like completely using it as an escape. I'll like just pop it on in the car or something like that, and just be driving down the road, and all of a sudden like one part comes on, and I'm like, oh, I've never confronted this part of myself. I need to like figure this
Mhm.
out. I'm like, what the heck? Why is Harry Potter doing this to me all of a sudden?
Sneaks up on you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's such a good description of what this really does. It's like a good escape, but also such a good like lighthouse, and that like it guides you to learn more about yourself and to yeah, really understand more about who you are. I think it's so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me on this journey. This is great. I love this. I feel like
Yeah.
we can keep talking about this for more hours after hour after hour.
Yeah,
But
I didn't get to talk about all my favorite moments. Can we
yeah, yeah,
talk?
okay.
Do you have time?
Let's rewind. Yeah, let's rewind. Give me some more of your favorite
Okay.
moments.
We got the yeah, I keep getting off track, but when another favorite Luna moment
Yeah.
is when Harry and Hermione and Ron, are at their house
Mm-hmm.
and to talk to Xenophilius, and
Yeah.
Harry sees the paintings of,
Yeah.
I think it's him, Ron, Hermione, Ginny,
Yeah.
and
I was gonna
Neville
mention that before. Yeah.
with like the gold chain of the words friends over and over again. Ah, and like the her description of like he felt this, rush of affection
Yeah.
for Luna. I'm just like, oh, I love her so much.
She's so
She's so
great.
sweet and
Yeah.
pure um and weird, and I love
Yeah. And
it.
she's not ashamed of her weirdness. I love that.
Yes, hard on her sleeve, like, yeah, absolutely zero self-consciousness.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
incredible, and
It's
just says
incredible.
funny. She's funny too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
She's like
ah,
low
love
key,
her.
very funny. I love that. It's a great moment.
Low key what?
Just like so hilarious. Like she doesn't even realize
Yeah.
how funny she is.
Yeah, sometimes she doesn't realize it, or like for some reason the part like Ron says something goofy, but it's not that funny,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
she just
And she
starts
just cracks
cracking
up.
up,
Yeah.
and she's like, "You're funny."
I love that section. She's
Yeah,
great.
that's a really funny part. Um, so yeah, other some of my other favorite parts is Harry on Liquid Luck.
Oh, one of the best
That's an
chapters.
awesome
Love that.
chapter.
Love that chapter.
The Silver Doe,
Yep. All
it's
time,
so special.
all time chapter. That's
Yeah.
like that was one of those chapters I remember. I very like I don't remember a ton of the chapters when I read it for the first time, but the two that I really, really remember, or there's three that I really remember. I remember the Mirror of Erised. I remember the cave, and I remember the Silver Doe. I remember the Silver Doe the
Mm.
chapter. I was like gripping onto. I was like, I remember reading it on a pink couch that my parents had. And I remember like gripping onto the side rest while I was reading it. I was like so enthralled by that chapter. Oh, it was so good.
It's such a beautiful image,
Yeah.
and it's incredible that it was Snape. Like it's still
Mm-hmm.
incredible to me,
Yeah.
and it's so beautiful that his Patronus is a doe. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Um, yeah, and that corresponds with another favorite part is when Harry's in his memories, in the
Mm.
around the final battle,
Yeah.
and we find out and we hear him like, speaking with Nigellus, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like
Yep.
when he says they're in the Forest of Dean and he's talking with Dumbledore, like he's talking to everybody
Yeah.
and figuring, and like he pulls the sword out.
Yeah. All the
It's just
cylinders are
still,
firing. It's great.
yeah. Yeah, and the forest again
Mm.
is painful. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's actually, this I think I wrote something about like, there's a lot of these moments where I wrote, well, I think like part of the reason why like 7 is not my favorite, it wasn't my favorite this last read, is like it's painful. Like I
Yeah.
wrote down, it's so painful, but it's so beautiful and
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
I can't. I sob.
Yeah.
I don't just cry
No.
during that, like when he goes into the forest and uses the resurrection stone.
Mm.
That part's really hard for me. Like I kind of it's I kind of have a love-hate relationship with book 7
Yeah. Same.
because it's just so poignant.
Yeah, it crushes you. And it's interesting too because I think everyone has different emotional moments at the end of book 7 for like what part they loved and like what part comes back, and like there's that going into the forest I think is one of the best written chapters that she's ever done. I think that and the Mirror Verse that are her
Yeah.
two best, but that one is just every line is like just so devastating. It's like everything that Harry's thinking, everything that he's going through. I'm like, I can break down and cry at any single line that is written in that chapter. It's just such a
Yeah.
perfectly written chapter.
Another moment that's just like the writing's just incredible is, and like the story, the content's incredible, is the graveyard when Voldemort comes back.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's
Um
so good.
when his parents come out of the wand, like, oh
Yep.
gosh, that, and Cedric, like I struggle with that part too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um it's again, it's like painful
Yeah.
and but also so beautiful.
That's why there's a few of these, like, it's just so good because there's a few chapters that just kind of like hit you over the head and you forget about them, and then all of a sudden they come back. And that's one too where like it's in the middle of like Voldemort coming back. It's in the middle of like Cedric dying. It shouldn't like hit you over the head that heavy, and then all of a sudden his parents pop out of the wand, and everything that like there's so much deeper meaning behind like really what's going on. And yeah, it's a
I
devastating bit of writing.
I think I went like I've I think I mentioned like I've done 3 full read throughs.
Mm-hmm.
I think I went back and like read like I just wanted some light reading
Mm-hmm.
and I read 4, but I couldn't finish it. Like I knew like in the maze I was like, okay, I can't. I
We're
just
just gonna
can't.
cut it off here.
Yeah. Like
That's
I don't
hilarious.
feel I think I have quite a journey ahead of me
Yeah, 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 for sure.
with like from the ending of 6 through 7 for sure. Because I feel like I don't even know how to talk about it.
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't yeah, I just feel like I'm just at 5 right now. Like that's just emotionally where I'm
Yeah.
at is 5.
You could just chill out
And
in
I'm
five
not
for a bit. Just keep
there's
reading in
just like
five.
yeah, I think there's like too much grief at
Yeah.
from the end of 6 through 7.
Yeah, there's too
And
much
2
grief.
it's like
They
yeah.
they uproot so much stuff in those books. It's like, yeah. Those ones are tough. Those ones are tough. They're brilliant.
There's I
So
feel like there's a
brilliant.
lot of growing pains too, like different
Yeah.
kinds of growing pains from 5.
Yeah.
Like more
Agreed.
painful growing pains in
Yeah.
7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like kind of with you. Ah,
Yeah.
these are great. Well, you got to let us know whenever you hit 6, whenever you're ready to go on to 6 and 7.
Okay.
And then
Okay,
we'll
I
do
will.
another one of these of you processing through 6
Okay.
and 7. It's perfect.
Okay. Yeah, because all I can say about him over and over again is, "Oh, it's so painful, but so beautiful." Like that's all
Yeah.
I have to say about him,
It's a good synopsis of the
pretty
series.
much.
It is a great
Yeah.
synopsis of the series. It is so painful, yet so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's what this tamale talk's gonna be titled. It's painful, but it's
Okay.
beautiful. All
I was
right.
thinking it could be titled take a drink every time this chick says trauma because I don't know if I really ended up talking
No,
about
I
it that
don't think
much,
you
but
said it that
that
much. I don't think I'll get drunk off of
no.
that. I think you did great. This is fantastic.
Um but trauma does come up for me a lot when I'm reading
Yeah.
them. But yeah, I mean like Harry definitely has a lot of trauma.
Yeah, for sure.
And a lot of the characters do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it helps us understand our own trauma. I think it's great. I love that
Yeah.
it's did that and it's doing that for you. And I love even what you said even earlier or kind of toward the end, but earlier toward the end when you were like this book it's still meaning something to me. Like I'm still trying to figure out what it means to me because I love that. It's the
Yeah.
same thing with me. Like every single time I read this series, I get something new from it, or I learn something new about myself, or I figure out how to like yeah, it's like you're always getting something new from this series. I feel like a good book series will always do that,
Yes.
and this is one of those that really you can learn something new every single time that you read it. Every chapter, if you read a chapter at a different point in your life, or even like the next day, you might get something new from it. I think it's fantastic for that reason.
I've never read another series that does that like this one.
Yeah, yeah, I'm kind of the same. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's great. All right. Well, thanks. Well, we'll have to have a part 2 to this because this is fantastic. Well, thank you so much. This is great. I love this. I really have missed these tamale talks, so I'm glad that we're back.
They're great. I love listening to them too.
Yeah,
And yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you so much, John.
my pleasure. I'm glad that we were able to do this.
Yeah, I'll do a part 2. I'll talk about Harry Potter anytime.
Good. I love that. I love that. I know. I'm gonna have to circle around. We're gonna have to do all part 2s to all these tamale talks because this is like this
Yeah, you
really is one of
should.
my favorite part because like I love going through the books with everyone. I love doing the podcast, but like I just especially doing the podcast, it's made me want to nerd out with other people who nerd about the Harry Potter series more. Like I have to do the podcast with people who have never read the series, and I love that because I get to
Mhm.
like usher people into this world, and it is so enjoyable for me. But at the same time, when I do that, I'm like, I just want to talk about this part of the book, and you're not at that point yet. You don't get it.
Yeah.
You're not gonna. And I'm like, these tamale talks fill a void in my heart that I've needed to be filled. They're so
Yeah,
good.
it's like balance
Yeah.
because when you're doing the pod, you have to have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of patience and hold your tongue.
Yeah.
You can't totally nerd out.
Yeah,
So you gotta
exactly.
have the balance of the newts and the tamale talks.
Exactly, exactly. This is perfect. So thank you. Thank you for letting me gush and rant about certain things in Harry Potter, even though this is supposed to be you doing that, but we did it together.
No, you let me do it too. Yeah, thank
Good.
you.
Good.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right. Thanks, John.
All right. I'll talk to you later, Bria.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.